Hey, everybody, what's up? Trey Wingo here alongside Mark Schlereth. Emergency chop shop session needed after what happened over the weekend where the Rams and the Lions pull off an unbelievable trade of quarterbacks and picks. Matthew Stafford is now the starting quarterback for the Rams, and Jared Goff goes from sunny LA to Detroit. There's a lot to get into here. And Stink, I think we first have to congratulate you because you were telling anyone who would listen whenever you talk to them, whether it was after calling a Lions game or on your local radio show, hey, man, Matthew Stafford's in play and people should go get him. And as it turned out, there were a ton of teams that were interested in Matthew Stafford, and the Rams made the best offer.
Yeah, they certainly did. And I like to think of myself as being on I Told You So Island, and it's beautiful, sunny, and there's pina coladas flowing. It's a great, like, people in Denver didn't think that Matthew Stafford's an upgrade. And I get so many people that are like, well, Matthew Stafford, doesn't have a career winning percentage, or I'm
God.
thinking, it just drives me bananas. Oh, by the way, the one time Matthew Stafford had a top 10 defense that he played with, they went 11-5 and went to the playoffs.
Thank you.
He's had,
get
this, in 12 seasons, he's had exactly 1,100-yard rushers. I've done the math. That's less than one 100-yard rusher per season. And yet somehow he sucks. The guy is incredible. He is one of the toughest guys on the planet. He plays hurt. He plays injured. And he is an exceptional player. And I'm telling you, for the Rams, what a coup. And I love this because I grew up in a day and age of the NFL when I played for Joe Gibbs in Washington, where Joe Gibbs didn't believe in first-round draft picks. He always
real quickly, to your point there, just so you know, I'm glad you're bringing that up now, because people are like, well, the Rams won't have a first-round pick for 7 seasons. Who the hell cares? The Redskins in the 70s and also in the 80s also went 7 and at one point 10 straight seasons without a first-round pick. And guess what they did in the 80s? They won a bunch of Super Bowls.
Right. I'm telling you. So under Bobby Beathard and under Joe Gibbs, they were like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that I can give you this unknown commodity. Here you go. Yeah. Have no idea if it's any good. Have no idea if it works. But here you go. And I get a proven commodity? Like, sign me up, please. Thank you. Yeah. And for Matthew Stafford, the way the league is constructed, the way they protect quarterbacks, to me, Matthew Stafford at 32 years old, he'll be 33 next season. You got another 10 years. For at least 7.
Thank you. Look, let's start with the Rams side of this, because it was pretty clear over the last 2 years, really. Look, 2018, everything worked. Jared Goff was on fire. They got to the Super Bowl. Although I think you and I both saw the same thing in that Super Bowl, which was a defensive showdown that was not boring. 13-3, the Patriots over the Rams. The stage looked a little big for Jared in that game. Didn't you get that sense a little bit?
I did get that sense. I tell you, the Rams are a smash mouth football team under Sean McVay that's disguised, as a spread. We're going to throw it all over the ball yard football team. Correct. And when Todd Gurley, and you can't tell me he wasn't injured. When Todd Gurley got injured after about 10 games of the season, you saw this steady decline of that offense and what they were able to do. And that to me was really the big sign is if they can't run it, if they can't dominate line of scrimmage, if they can't do the things that they need to do from that standpoint, Jared Goff isn't enough to get them over the top. And I think that's the realization they came to. They said, hey, yeah, if everything is clicking correctly and we're running the ball well and the play action is open, we can win with Jared Goff. But on the occasion that those things don't happen, or when a defense just says, hey, listen, we'll let you throw it, but you are not running it down our throats, Jared Goff isn't enough to lift us over the top, and that's why we're going in a different direction.
Yeah, I agree. And look, let's now first start with the fit, right? Because people need to understand what Matthew Stafford is and what he isn't. I'm glad you said that, because I'm getting these things. Well, his win percentage. Shut up, man. Look, wins are not a quarterback stat. They're just not. We can pretend like they are, but they're not. To your point, if he had a running game and a defense, he would have won a hell of a lot more games in Detroit. So now we have a fit, right? We have a fit schematically with what Matthew Stafford can do, with what Sean McVay and the Rams want to do. And let's be honest, since 2018, the Rams offense has taken a backseat to the defense. So they were a defensive dominated team in 2020, went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. And they were a offensive dominated team in 2018 that went to the Super Bowl. What that tells me is the coaching staff knows a bunch of different ways to win, and they're finding different ways to win based on the personnel they have, which is the essence of coaching. Don't say, this is my system, you do this. No, what do your players do best? Let's work around them. Tell me why you and I both believe Sean McVay knows that Matthew Stafford is an upgrade for the Rams at quarterback.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, elite level toughness. Yes. There is a toughness about Matthew Stafford, an ability to play injured, an ability to play hurt. He's going to show up on a week-to-week basis, and he's going to play tough. So he'll set a toughness tone for the organization at the quarterback position. Then ultimately, there are, like, when I think about arm talent in the National Football League, a guy that can make every throw, he's a guy that can make every throw. But I think of three guys that come to mind that have ridiculous arm talent. I'm probably missing one or two. But when I think of the best arm talent guys in football, I think of Aaron Rodgers. Yep. I think of Patrick Mahomes, and I think of Matt Stafford.
I agree with you.
On a pure arm talent standpoint. And then on top of that, I mean, here is a guy that has never had a running game, that has never been supported over the course of his career, that has never had an elite level offensive line that could keep people off of him. And yet he's a guy that just continues to put up numbers. Now, some people would say, well, they're hollow numbers. He's chasing numbers. They're always behind. Well, yeah, because guess what? Your team and your franchise and your organization suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course those things are happening to him, but I am telling you, like, and I've told you this before, and I'll just reiterate it. I was talking to Bruce Arians, this is just a few weeks ago, and Bruce told me, I will leave the locker room early to watch Matthew Stafford throw the ball. He has elite level touch. I love watching him throw the ball, elite level arm talent. And he goes, and he is tough as shit. And there's not a quarterback I respect any more in the league than Matthew Stafford. And that's coming from Bruce Arians, who coached, oh, by the way, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck,
and
Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer, and Tom Brady. I mean,
right.
Give me a break. So I know that the problem with the NFL today, let me just give you my soapbox on from I Told You So Island. The problem is we have become so enamored with fantasy football that we think fantasy football is real football. It's not. Just because you throw out Herman Moore or you throw out Megatron or you throw, like, just because you have some guys doesn't make you a great football team. And people need to understand that. They really do. And they just don't have any concept. They look at it, and I'll blame Kansas City. Like, I blame a lot of things, like the pandemic, I blame on Kansas City. Because when you turn the world on its head by winning a Super Bowl, everything is your fault after that. Like, there used to be this time in my life.
I'm with you on the fantasy football thing and everyone stealing the Chiefs playbook. I was like, how is he going to blame the pandemic on the Chiefs? But okay, well, I got it. As a former Denver Bronco, they never won a damn thing. I get it. I get what you're saying now.
Yeah, I used to.
I'll let you say that. I'm not doing that. I'll let you say that.
Yeah. I used to be able to count on them being September's darlings, right? They're going to win in September, and they're going to ruin, and everybody's going to be excited. Then come the playoffs, they're going to shit their hat. And now they're a world champion. Like, the whole world turned on upside down on its axis because of them. Anyhow, but people look at Kansas City and just think, oh, if all we do is draft speed, we're going to win. Like, that's all you need. And they're so much better. Kansas City is so much better than the speed. Like you forget that Travis Kelce's a damn good football player. He just happens to be fast. Hey, Hill is a damn good football. He happens to be fast. Patrick Mahomes is just a damn good football player. He just happens to have a lot of talent.
Yeah, we'll get into much more. We'll get into much more in Kansas City in our Super Bowl preview coming up on Friday. But I get what you're saying.
Okay, so that's
the
where
point is. Yeah, I understand that now. That makes sense to me. Now, what's really weird about this from the Rams angle to me is they are clearly doing things that we've never seen before. For example, the Rams had the biggest dead cap hit last year in Brandon Cook's contract of $21 million. That was the biggest ever. Well, guess what? Their dead cap hit this year is going to be Jared Goff at $22 million. So 2 years in a row, they've gone and had the biggest dead cap history. For those that don't know, dead cap is what counts against your cap for a player that's no longer on your team. They did it with Brandon Cooks last year, made the playoffs, won a playoff game. They're going to do it again this year with Jared Goff. So I find it, look, the Rams are sort of brilliantly interesting. They don't care about first-round picks. Again, they're barring a trade. They're going to go 7 straight years without a first-round pick. The last first-round pick was Jared Goff that they just shipped off to the Rams. And they don't care much about the salary cap because they're carrying all this dead money last year for Brandon Cooks and this year for Jared Goff. But Mark, while I think this is brilliant, is because there is no dominant team in the NFC. And you have Matthew Stafford with a wide receiver core that doesn't have a true number one, but they have great number twos across the board, whether it's Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods or Everett. They have a plethora of twos that actually make up for not having a one. And they have a dominant defense on every level with a stacked defensive line, good linebacking core, and led by a shutdown corner in Jalen Ramsey. They, over the next 3 years, could be as good as anybody in the NFC and get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they also understand that the salary cap is easily manipulated. Like you
Correct.
can
funny
eat that
money.
you can eat that $22 million and go, oh gosh, $22 million. Let's give Matthew Stafford a long-term deal. He's going to be here for 5 years anyhow. Let's redo that contract. There's ways around dead money. So yeah. I don't get too worried about that. Obviously, they're not very worried about that.
No.
And I'm with you, man. That's a damn good football team. And I think the other thing that blows me away is, again, we've been sold this bill of goods that if you don't have the top paid kind of big time wide receiver, you can't win. That's garbage. Like, you have to have good football players. And one thing I love about the Rams, you watch Robert Woods, you watch Cooper Kupp, you watch these guys get involved in not only the blocking game and how important and imperative they are on the edges, whether it's an insert player picking up a safety, whether it's cutting off the backside edge of a defensive end, they are willing participants in that part of the game, and it opens up big time plays in their play action game. So I just have a ton of respect for the way their receivers play football, coached by the way, my former teammate from the University of Idaho, Eric Yarber. So Yarbs is doing a great job with those guys. But, Yarbs tells me, and I've talked to him about it multiple times, hey, man, I'm not concerned about anything but having football players at the wide receiver position. And that's what they have. So I just think this is an incredible fit for Matthew Stafford. And ultimately, I just think it makes them a very viable option in those times when their offense isn't necessarily clicking, that guy can make enough plays for them to keep them in any ball game.
Yeah, and the other thing we need to say, and we'll get to the line side of this in a second, the other thing we need to say is that, look, they don't have those first-round picks, but what did they get for those first-round picks? They now have Matthew Stafford. They used a couple on Jalen Ramsey. I think people would say, fine, I'll take that. They also have Leonard Floyd now on their team, a former first-round pick from the Chicago Bears. So you can look at it and say, well, you don't have those first-round picks, but history tells us that's a 50-50 shot at best at being a legitimate starter, let alone a high-level player like a Jalen Ramsey or a Leonard Floyd. So I don't have a problem with that. And they've done a great job in rounds 2 through 7. I mean, Cam Akers, you talked about. Cam Akers was a second or third round pick, and he is going to be a very good, high-functional back for the Rams without that high price.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Robert Woods, a second rounder. I think Cooper Kupp was a third rounder. I think, they have got really good players defensively. They've been able to find guys in the second, third, and fourth round that have just become like premier players at their positions, at the safety position, the linebacker position. So they're doing a great job in their scouting department, finding not only finding great players, but finding great players that fit the role that they want those players to play in. And, and part of it's the draft. I think more importantly than the draft is drafting the right guys, obviously, but then the development aspect of the draft. And I think that's where they're winning. They're just winning on the development aspect of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, look, and you could say GM Les Snead is like that GIF where everybody's just throwing money around like this at this point, but he's backed it up with those solid picks in the draft. Now, caveat, that has to continue over the next 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
And if they stop doing that, then they're in real trouble. But I think in a weird way, with no first-round picks and a massive cap hit for the second straight year, I can look at the Rams and say they're just as good as any team in the NFC going forward. And then you hear people say, well, what happens if, Deshaun Watson goes to the Niners and all this kind of stuff? Well, first of all, I don't think Deshaun Watson's going anywhere. I mean, I know he wants to go somewhere, but the Texans are going to have to let him go. I don't think they have any interest in letting him go, and I think they're curious to see how far that Deshaun Watson is going to push this stand. So as the NFC sits right now, I also don't think Carson Wentz is going anywhere. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going anywhere. I mean, it's all fun clickbait, but the biggest and most viable commodity was Matthew Stafford. And the reason he was a viable commodity, because the Lions, we have to say this, did him right. They did him a solid. He'd been there 11 years. He's been through all these coaching changes. And they said, you know what? You're right. This thing has worked for 11 years. You've done everything we can want from you, and you've played through pain. You've gone through all this stuff. Let's see what we can do to get you where you want to go. He has a house in Manhattan Beach. And of course, there's a whole Clayton Kershaw. They went to high school together, blah, blah, blah. We heard that a million times. They did him a solid, and the Rams did the Lions a solid in return by giving them a boatload of picks. And I've heard people say already, oh, this is clearly a huge win as we grade this trade for the Lions. Look at what they got. And my thing is, how can you grade a trade when it's based on picks and you have no idea what the hell those picks are going to be? Like, for example, the Raiders, right? They got a plethora of picks over the last couple of drafts for trading away Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack. You know what they got back in return? Nothing on the level of Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack. You look at the 5 first-round picks they've had over the last few years. Cleveland Ferrell, Jonathan Abrams. Okay, maybe he's decent. Josh Jacobs, very good player. They got Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett this year. So all the capital they have expended from getting rid of Amari Cooper and getting rid of Khalil Mack has led to those players. Are any of those players I just mentioned anywhere near the level of competition and level of player that Khalil Mack has been for the Bears or that Amari Cooper has been for the Cowboys?
No, I mean, it's not even close. And I've done multiple Raiders games, and I like what they were doing, because they were sitting in a situation where they're like, we can't pay these guys. We need salary cap certainty. That's kind of where they were going to go into their new stadium and to do all these things. So that's kind of where they were. And I had talked to John Gruden a couple of years ago doing a game. They say, hey, we have to strip it down to the studs because we have to prepare to move to Vegas. So that happened. Obviously, the pandemic, there's no fans and all that kind of stuff. But you're 100% right. I mean, you can't put any of those people in the same breath that you put Khalil Mack, because he's an incredible player. So you're 100% right. I mean, again, we get, because of the salary cap and because of the salary certainty, people covet draft picks way too much. Like, hey, now we know what we got. Well, it's like Tommy Boy. If you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I'm happy to do it for you, right? It doesn't really do anything. I mean, so I just want guys that can play. And the draft, I've been around long enough, and I went through multiple drafts, and I've seen multiple first rounders that can't play. And so it just is not that big a deal to me as a player. Like, a first rounder, whoop-de-doo, Basil. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I think the technical Tommy Boy line is, hey, if you want a T-bone steak, I could shove your head up a cow's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. That's also, that's also part of it. But that's the point. Like, right. I think the Lions did a good job in taking care of a guy that serviced them well, and they got back a decent haul. But now it is all on the Lions. It's all on a new front office and a new coaching staff to do what, wait for it, the Lions have been terrible at for about 10 or 15 years, is finding and developing talent. So I can't sit here in any way, shape, or form and say the Rams won this trade or the Lions won this trade. I think the Rams upgraded their quarterback situation, and I think they're just as good as anybody now in the NFC, again, barring no massive health issues for Matthew Stafford. But I can't tell you what the Lions are out of this trade because I don't know what they're going to get, and nobody will know until about 3 years from now.
All right, so let me ask you this, because I think this is fascinating. It came up on my radio show this morning. Do you think that Jared Goff is the long-term answer in Detroit, or do you think he may get moved here come draft time for maybe a second rounder and they continue to compile picks?
Well, listen, the narrative out there is that Jared Goff has had conversations with people there and they expect him to be the day one starter. But as we sit here on February 1st, that's the easiest thing in the world to say when you make the deal. I think if the Lions are smart about it, they have every option available to them because they have a plethora of picks and they have a commodity in Jared Goff that a lot of people will still value. And I want to be clear about something here. When we talked about maybe the stage being a little bright in that Super Bowl, and it was, let's just be honest,
Right.
he was sailing throws left and right. That doesn't mean I'm giving up on Jared Goff. I think still Jared Goff can be a top half quarterback in the NFL, like one of the top 16, maybe even around a top 10 if everything works correctly for him. So I'm not giving up on what Jared Goff is or isn't. I'm just saying there's a little more certainty with Matthew Stafford. If you're the Lions, you would be foolish, absolutely foolish, to not entertain every possibility. Talk about stripping it down to the studs. The studs are all that's left in Detroit. You have to build off that, and you have to find a way with every single valuable piece of property that you have to maximize and build. So yeah, I can't sit here. I mean, they're telling him Jared Goff that because that's what they have to tell him right now. But I can't say with any great certainty one way or another whether or not that's going to be the case.
The whole quarterback thing, the conundrum of finding your quarterback is interesting to me. And people covet the first round, and it's elevated a lot of second and third round players into the first round.
Correct.
At that position in particular. And it's amazing to me because people think if we just draft one early, we've solved the conundrum. Like we've solved the riddle. If you just look at history, I mean, that draft, Jared Goff 1, Carson Wentz 2. How's that working out? Go back a couple of years. How about Jameis Winston 1 and Marcus Mariota 2? How's that working out?
Both sitting on the bench now, although Jameis may end up starting for New Orleans. We'll see what happens. But you're right. Like, it is littered. Like, you go back to the 2011 draft. There was Cam Newton, number 1 overall. The other first-round quarterbacks were Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, and Christian Ponder. Okay.
Right.
In 2012, the first pick was Andrew Luck, retired. The second pick was RG3, free agent looking for his third team. The third quarterback taken was Ryan Tannehill. And he's the only one in the first round that's solid. And then Russell Wilson was taken in the third round. So you can go down the list of first round quarterbacks. It is as much miss as it is hit. So don't tell me that somebody has won this trade because they got a ton of picks. It all depends on what those picks become.
Yeah. And again, that to me, really the best franchises, this is it's pretty simple. Like, when you think about it, it seems to make sense. I just think it's hard kind of in practicum. You know, it's easy in theory, hard to do, is to don't ask your guys to do things they can't do. Like, I think a lot of teams draft guys in hopes that they're going to be something they're not. And they try to make them something they're not, as opposed to going, okay, this is what the guy is. Let's put him in a position to win. So many NFL teams, I think so many businesses, I just think so many organizations essentially covet what you're not, and then are upset when you fail because they're like, well, how come he couldn't do this? Well, because he's never been able to do that. And you put him in this position. Like, don't be surprised when you put a guy in a position to fail and he fails. You shouldn't be surprised by that. You should expect it. And too many NFL teams draft guys that don't fit and think we're going to make him into what we're going to make him in our image, you know? No, I mean, you're not the Lord, right? You got to put him in a position to win.
So I think the way we can sort of sum up what we believe in this trade, which is fascinating again on so many levels because of the picks and the history of the both teams, I think we both can say, look, here's what I know about the Rams under Sean McVay and Les Snead. A, they're willing to swing big. B, they've been fairly successful, okay? Remember what the Rams were before Les Snead or before, quite frankly, Sean McVay got there? They were shit. They were nothing. Yeah. They were terrible, okay? Since they've gotten there, they've been a consistently winning team. They've made the playoffs all but one of his years, and they've won playoff games and made it to the Super Bowl. That's what I know about the Rams under Sean McVay and Les Snead. And I think we both agree that barring catastrophic health issues, Matthew Stafford is an upgrade. So for me, right away, I see what the Rams are doing. The Lions, on the other hand, we know what the Lions have been. They've been lather, rinse, repeat, cycle spin of mediocrity or worse when it comes to decision-making in the front office, decision-making in the hiring of coaches, and decision-making on on how you pick your players. So I have no idea what this is going to be for the Lions. Could it work out great? Yes. But there's nothing in the track record of the franchise recently, and especially the people that are now in place, to say I have any faith that that is actually going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting about the Lions. You think about some of the great players in the history of this league that went to the Lions and never were able, to have success on a grand scale of team success, individual success.
Correct.
For sure.
Sure.
But Barry Sanders, ends up just retiring while he's still, churning out 1,800-yard seasons. He's just like, I'm out.
Megatron did the same thing. He's like, I'm done with this, man. I'm out. And Stafford, to his credit, he said, look, I'm probably going to retire if you don't do this. And, he was like, look, I want to work with you guys, but you guys I gave you 11 years, man. Come on. I gave you 11 years.
Right.
So listen, again, for me on the Lions, I give them credit for doing a solid to a guy who'd been a great soldier for them. But they are the unknown in this, right? What the Rams are is way more of a known than what we know is going to happen in Detroit. Right. And that's why I can't grade this trade. I can't grade this trade yet.
No, there is absolutely no way. And hopefully with Chris Spielman being there, with Dan Campbell being there, hopefully they start to understand that if we're going to build an organization that's actually going to have staying power, especially in the division that we play in, we have got to build it from the inside out. We have got to be able to dominate lines of scrimmage, because I guarantee you, when you line up against the Bears, at least the Bears defensively, you better be able to hold your own in the fisticuffs that is that battle on line of scrimmage. And then when you line up with Green Bay or you line up with Minnesota, I know Minnesota knows how to run the ball. I know, with Zimmer, they're gonna rectify the defensive issues they had last year with injuries and guys missing time and free agents. But the bottom line is, in that division, especially in the cold nastiness that is, outside of Detroit, because they play in that dome, you better be able to do those things.
Yeah. So this has been an emergency edition of the Chop Shop because we needed to talk about this. So enjoy I Told You So Island. I hear it's 80 degrees with a slight breeze coming off the bay, which is beautiful. And we'll reconvene on Friday to break down what we think is going to happen in Super Bowl 55 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'll see you then, big boy.
All right, buddy.